The King's Avatar, Chapter 1647, a high-end that can't be appreciated. Audio source, wuxia-world-audiobook.com. Chapter 1647, a high-end that can't be appreciated. Translator, Gnome Yummy. Editor, Gnome Yummy. The message hung in the chat, just like that. If this were the key to victory, then this kind of statement should have been said only after victory was certain. Revealing this to the opponent halfway through was a bit amateur. But Yishu said it in the chat, and everyone had seen it, of course including his opponent Sun Shang. Because there was a key word in this sentence, experience. A word that would frequently be mentioned when analyzing a player's strength, a term that had no feeling of newness. A term that would be analyzed again and again, that always had a crucial impact on victory. Once again, in this peak championship deciding match, it came up. Experience, experience, experience. Young people probably didn't like this term because they were always criticized for their shortcoming in this area, and this thing was so difficult to obtain. It wasn't like talent or natural gifts, which one could be born with. Accumulate. Aside from accumulating, there was no other way. Sun Shang had debuted in Season 7, and after today, he would have completed 4 full seasons. And starting from Season 7, he had always been the core of his team. True, he had spent Season 9 in the Challenger League. But after these 4 years, although Sun Shang was still young, he was far from being a rookie. Not enough experience? By now, this was something of the past. The Sun Shang of today could no longer be said to lack experience. He didn't lack it, but if comparing the total amount of experience, Sun Shang was still far inferior to Yishu, who had debuted a full 10 years ago. Although experience was important, and would sometimes become the key point in determining victory, it was not the only factor. Sun Zhang's experience couldn't compare to that of Yishu or the other older players, but his experience was still enough to deal with professional matches. He would not make mistakes from his inexperience. Yet now, what Yishu pointed out about him was experience, and it was a very particular type of experience. Do you have enough experience to control a one autumn leaf in this state? The message simply hung there, as Sun Shang had no chance to reply. As soon as Yishu sent that message, he immediately controlled Lord Grimm to attack. Sun Zhang's one autumn leaf was forced on the defensive, hurriedly backing up. The attacks from the NPCs caused him even more confusion. A number of them were actually aimed at Lord Grimm, but under Yishu's purposeful direction, they also aimed toward Sun Shang in the end. Yishu was a bit better at handling this kind of chaotic situation than Sun Shang was, which wasn't too surprising. From the very beginning, many pro players had believed that Happy's best choice was to send Yishu up first, exactly for this reason. They believed that Yishu's experience was the best weapon in dealing with this kind of chaos. When they saw Sun Shang control one autumn leaf reach this peak state, their opinions changed. In front of such a powerful one autumn leaf, the interference of the NPCs was just that weak. No one doubted that Sun Shang had the ability to sweep all of these NPCs away like dust. So when Yishu controlled Lord Grimm to attack anyway, everyone felt that it was an unwise move. Because Yishu could do no more than deal with this chaos, while Sun Shang, in their eyes, could disregard the chaos completely. But in the end, once Yishu entered the fray, this one autumn leaf in peak form suddenly seemed as though he couldn't get his bearings. After that Dracona Crusher and being slashed twice by Lord Grimm, Sun Zhang's rhythm was thrown off for good. And Yishu dared to write out Sun Zhang's problem and send it in a message, precisely because even if Sun Shang was aware of the problem he faced, he had no way of addressing it. 5 types of chasers, plus Stage 8 battle spirit. Indeed, this was a peak form battle mage that up until now had never appeared on the professional stage. Not in the team competition, and certainly not in an individual battle. The other teams didn't know if Sun Shang had ever undergone training specifically to control a battle mage in this state. But from typical reasoning, it was unlikely that he'd practice a lot, because it was simply too difficult to reach this state. Even if a player were purposely aiming for it, they should be aware that wanting it wasn't enough to get it. Spending all that energy to train this very difficult to obtain state, this definitely was not a training plan that a pro player should follow. Nor would a team's training allow players to waste their precious time on training in this entirely unrealistic situation. Furthermore, even if Sun Xiang had actually trained with this state, this was still the first time he'd been able to bring it on stage. And this time, the opponent he was facing was Yi Shu. The Yi Shu who had immersed himself in Battle Mage for no fewer than 10 years. The Yi Shu who had controlled one Autumn Leaf for no fewer than 10 years. Even if he didn't use Battle Mage after that. Even if he no longer controlled one Autumn Leaf. Just based on these no fewer than 10 years of experience, Yi Shu would be no worse than Sun Xiang at understanding or controlling Battle Mage 1 Autumn Leaf in this condition. And no worse than logically led to better than. WuxiaWorldAudio.com. Lunge, knee strike, earthquake sword, falling flower palm. 4 consecutive skills. The myriad manifestations umbrella shifted between 4 forms, once again attacking the openings that one Autumn Leaf exposed. The last was a Battle Mage's falling flower palm, blowing one Autumn Leaf away. Besides, you have an injury that everyone seems to have overlooked. Yi Shu was still speaking in the channel. You're a player who class changed to Battle Mage. Many people have probably forgotten this by now. No. Yi Shu said. Class change. Correct. Sun Xiang had actually changed classes before. In the early days, the Sun Xiang who had debuted with Conquering Clouds to win Best Rookie didn't play a Battle Mage. Berserker. That was the class that Sun Xiang had used when he debuted, the class that helped him to break past the rookie wall and win Best Rookie. But in the end, in order to chase after the pinnacle god-level character, Sun Xiang resolutely gave up his original class and trained his Battle Mage. Even though he'd immediately demonstrated an outstanding foundation. So much so that people hardly thought at all about the problem of his class change. Now, after 2.5 years, Yi Shu brought up this old issue, and even called it an injury. In everyone's eyes, Sun Jiang's class change had been a success. Everyone had practically forgotten that he had class change experience, forgotten that he'd debuted as a berserker. This could be said to be the greatest proof of a successful class change. But now, in Yi Shu's eyes, this was an injury. Everyone stared with eyes wide, including the most god-level players of the Alliance. If Yi Shu's words weren't meant to be deliberately mystifying, then all they could say was that Yi Shu was simply too far above them in terms of Battle Mage expertise, far above what they could even perceive. The peak form 1 Autumn Leaf, in Yi Shu's eyes, was simply a 1 Autumn Leaf that Sun Xiang couldn't control, a 1 Autumn Leaf with deep injury. This was a high end that they couldn't appreciate at all. This blow is too much, the pro players discussed. Yi Shu really didn't need to say these kind of words, but to put them in the chat now, it was simply a psychological attack. End chapter.
The King's Avatar, Chapter 1648 Insurmountable Difference. Audio source, WuxiaWorldAudiobook.com. Chapter 1648 Insurmountable Difference. Translator, Nomyami. Editor, Nomyami. A peak form reached in a chance of a lifetime, only for it to be viewed as an injury, something that Sun Xiang couldn't handle. Anyone would feel extremely embarrassed, never mind someone as prideful as Sun Xiang. In the midst of countless things to worry about, Yi Shu still took the time to send this message. It was clearly more than just pure mockery, it was an extremely deep psychological attack. In response to these kinds of words, how would Sun Xiang react? Go crazy? Fall into depression? The pro players were throwing around guesses. They felt that no response would be surprising, that they were all reasonable. But in the end, Sun Xiang's response still managed to be outside all of their expectations. 1 Autumn Leaf Dragon breaks the ranks. But he wasn't charging forward to attack, he was running away. That confident, prideful Sun Xiang, after bringing one autumn leaf to this peak state and then suffering this kind of embarrassment, didn't fall into chaos because of this, nor did he desperately try to prove himself. His ultimate choice was to control one autumn leaf to run away. This final answer caught everyone off guard. After reaching this level, after the words had gotten to this point, that prideful, self-important Sun Xiang had actually chosen to flee. Never mind him, any pro player in his place under those conditions would want to fight to the death. Even if they'd lose in the end, they would refuse to be underestimated like this. But Sun Xiang had chosen to flee. This meant that he agreed with Ye Xiu's judgment, that he admitted that he couldn't control this peak form one autumn leaf. He set down his pride, set down his self-respect. Everything was for the sake of victory. Because, right now, running away was the wisest choice. He could escape the chaotic situation, wait for some of one autumn leaf's buffs to run out, allow one autumn leaf to remain in a state that Sun Xiang could comfortably control, and then return again to fight. Applause rose up from the pro players. The sound wasn't loud, but it had real worth. Sun Xiang wasn't a very well-liked player, and in the circle he wasn't very popular. As a Season 7 debut, he didn't have much seniority either. He had won Best Rookie, received all sorts of praise, but this was the first time he had received such genuine, weighty respect from the pro circle. Because he did what many people might have been unable to do. Pride, self-respect. Every pro player had these things, but not every player could set them down in this kind of difficult situation. Everyone had a certain understanding of Sun Xiang, so they knew how difficult it was for this youth to do this. But as they watched, he set those things down. Whether or not it would be enough to win, the very fact that he had done this was enough for people to feel moved. Using Dragon breaks the ranks in this way was even more difficult than using it to charge the enemy line. Ye Xiu was similarly surprised. Sun Xiang's change this season had been obvious, but even Ye Xiu hadn't thought that he would be able to throw away his pride and self-respect to this extent. Even though they were opponents, Ye Xiu couldn't help but want to applaud Sun Xiang, to raise a glass to him. But that was all. When it came to victory, Ye Xiu would not back down a single step. Xingcut. Lord Grimm was already chasing one autumn leaf's silhouette. Ye Xiu had no plans to let Sun Xiang have a chance to breathe so easily. The two characters suddenly rushed out of the chaotic fighting. The NPCs had aggroed both of them, but it wasn't single-minded focus. Their fighting amongst themselves had never stopped. Now that the two of them had escaped, they only threw a few attacks their way when it was convenient. They didn't make any overall organizational changes to attack them specifically. But the NPCs that were hidden on the cliffs to ambush them, these NPCs immediately chased after the two of them to attack. Right now, they were the ones with the upper hand in this battle. No one had the ability to stop their attacks. Ye Xiu and Sun Xiang could only dodge the attacks that rained down upon them as they continued to control their characters. At last, Lord Grimm managed to catch up to one autumn leaf, but Sun Xiang had already delayed this to the greatest extent. When Lord Grimm finally caught up, he didn't hastily initiate a desperate fight. The peak form one autumn leaf actually demonstrated a completely defensive stance. Too calm, too rational. It doesn't feel like Sun Xiang at all. Right, if we didn't already know, I really couldn't have guessed this was Sun Xiang. The pro players all discussed amongst themselves. Sun Xiang was the greatest talking point of this battlefield right now. His change, his attitude on the field right now, all of the players found it completely new. This season, Sun Xiang had been constantly adjusting himself, and everyone couldn't help but wonder, when they met him in the future, how should they deal with him? This kind of Sun Xiang, who could set down everything and focus only on victory, would only become harder to deal with. Yi Zhu is also very steady. Quote, at this time, someone else spoke. Sun Xiang's unexpected moves made him the center of the pro players' attention, and so to some extent they'd overlooked Yi Zhu's constant focus. WuxiaWorldAudio.com. Sun Xiang had made changes and adjustments, but he'd only been able to pull the situation back to the original starting point. Yi Zhu hadn't suffered any turbulent waves because of this. The starting point was the starting point. Whether facing the Sun Xiang who couldn't control his peak form character, or the Sun Xiang could set down his arrogance and give up on the peak form to return the situation to the starting point, Yi Zhu had implemented nothing but a single-minded pursuit of victory. Nothing would cause him to change on this point, to waver on this point. Even if he was moved by Sun Xiang's actions, he would now only become more determined and work even harder to win this match. The battle continued, their health bars whittled down. But during the time Sun Xiang had been unable to control his character properly, one autumn leaf had lost some health when trapped in the encirclement, and suffering attacks from Yi Zhu. Right now, Sun Xiang had readjusted himself, pulling himself together to battle anew, but this little disparity still hadn't evened out, because Yi Zhu didn't give him the slightest chance to do so. Maintain this difference, the health of the two characters continued to fall. There weren't any big drops, they just dripped away bit by bit. It was clear how carefully and meticulously both sides were playing. The entire audience was nervous watching Sun Xiang. When Yi Zhu had sent his messages in the chat, they had thought that Sun Xiang would lose for sure. None of them had thought that the battle would return to this kind of situation. They might not fully understand the significance of Sun Xiang using that dragon breaks the ranks to run away, but right now, they could see Sun Xiang's determination to win. Catch up. Samsara's fans stared desperately at that health difference. They cheered and hollered and hoped for it to wear away. But this difference remained stubborn and unsurmountable. The health of one autumn leaf and Lord Grimm dropped and dropped, but when one side's health finally reached zero, the difference was still there. In the first match of the group arena, Yi Zhu obtained victory. He finally established his legend of winning every single 1v1 in the entire season, including the playoffs. End chapter.
The King's Avatar, Chapter 1649, Killing Intent with Back to the Wall. Audio source, WuxiaWorldAudiobook.com. Chapter 1649, Killing Intent with Back to the Wall. Translator, Noam Yummy. Editor, Noam Yummy. The victor was Yi Zhu. The Samsara fans in the stadium couldn't be too happy about this no matter what. But they couldn't blame Sun Xiang. Ordinary viewers truly had no way of detecting a lot of the subtleties of this match. Sun Xiang couldn't control the peak form one autumn leaf. Sun Xiang had the injury of his class change. These were all words that Yi Zhu had directly said in the chat. But for ordinary gamers, even searching with this guidance, they couldn't see how Sun Xiang couldn't control his character, how he had this injury. They could only see from his dropping health how Sun Xiang had been at a disadvantage at that point in time. But soon enough, Sun Xiang's one autumn leaf had used a dragon breaks the ranks to break free. When he fought against Lord Grimm, he had stabilized his position. In the subsequent battle, neither side could be said to have a great advantage, and that difference in health from before was maintained all the way until the battle ended. 13%. This was that difference, and was the amount of health that Lord Grimm had remaining. Yi Zhu had won, but Sun Xiang's answer sheet was by no means ugly. In fact, in the eyes of the pro players, who understood things a bit better, Sun Xiang had earned a very high score. Sun Xiang, coming off stage, earned applause. Samsara's fans were encouraging Sun Xiang not to be discouraged. They had no idea right now that Sun Xiang had grown beyond their imagination. With Sun Xiang coming off stage, it was time for Samsara's second player to step up. Because of the unique format of the third match, no one knew who would be the second player that Samsara sent up. Perhaps even Samsara themselves were waiting until Sun Xiang lost and they could see the current situation to determine who would be their second player. At that moment, Samsara's captain Zhou Zikai stood up to welcome the returning Sun Xiang. No one paid much attention. Zhou Zikai greeted Sun Xiang, the two of them high-fived like in a relay, and still no one paid much attention. And then, the two of them brushed shoulders as they passed each other. Sun Xiang returned to his team and sat down, while Zhou Zikai continued to walk forward. The entire stadium went wild. Team Samsara, their second player was actually Zhou Zikai, their captain Zhou Zikai. This was even more shocking than Zhou Zikai playing first in the previous group arena. In that round, Samsara had at least left Sun Xiang as their fifth player. Their first player was very strong, but they still had a reliable anchor. Even though the final outcome wasn't what they'd hoped for, at least there was this kind of logic in their arrangement. But this match, Sun Xiang had already gone first, so setting Zhou Zikai as the fourth player was the most logical choice. Putting him in fifth would give more stability, putting him in third would be more aggressive. But now, they put him right in second. What was this? The order of the players was decided on the spot. If Sun Zhang's performance as the first player had been especially strong, a 1v2 or even a 1v3, then sending up Zhou Zikai second to aim for as many points as possible was still fairly logical. But right now, first player Sun Xiang had fallen without any victories, yet Samsara didn't save Zhou Zikai to anchor. Instead, they directly sent him up as their second player. Truly, not many people could understand this stance. They're sending up Zhou Zikai second. This quote. In the broadcast, commentator Pan Lin faltered in his words. Can't understand it at all. Li Yibo, who always liked to save face, no longer tried to stay vague. He directly admitted this. What was Samsara thinking? In the end, the ones who could understand their logic were still the other pro players. After getting over their initial shock and thinking it over, they could understand the thought behind Samsara's arrangement. Sun Xiang first, Zhou Zikai second. This was a whole. These two things couldn't be considered separately. In this group arena where the battle order could be changed on the spot, Samsara hadn't taken full advantage of this point. From the very start, they had worked out an order, and the core of this roster was Sun Xiang first, Zhou Zikai second. So, at the very start of the match, Sun Xiang hadn't cared about whether Happy had reported to the judge yet. He had simply directly walked to the competitor booth. This wasn't because he was careless and overconfident, nor was it because Samsara was trying to play any tricks. This was the plan that Samsara had decided upon for this final match from the very beginning, a roster order that was sharp to the extreme. Sun Xiang first, that was necessary. Zhou Zikai second, that was also necessary. This was a kind of back-to-the-wall killing intent. Even though Samsara wasn't facing that kind of desperate situation right now, they still brought out this kind of determination. So, Sun Xiang didn't care at all whether Happy had reported to the judge. No matter who their first player was, he would be fighting them. WuxiaWorldAudio.com. Nor did Zhou Zikai care about whether Sun Xiang had played the opening match well. He resolutely continued as Samsara's second player. Fighting with their backs to the wall, that meant they could only advance, they could not retreat. Even though Sun Zhang's loss meant that Samsara's arrangement was facing a very big difficulty, it was exactly for this reason that Zhou Zikai couldn't back down. If he retreated now, If they made further adjustments, maybe they could create a seemingly more stable roster, but for Samsara, that back-to-the-wall determination and killing intent would disappear. Therefore, Joe Sakai didn't back down. This player, who was silent to the extreme off-stage, had absolute confidence and courage when it came to battle. He had the determination to carry everything on his shoulders. Because he was the true core of this team, because he was the captain of this team, he led this team forward, lifting up everyone's morale, relying not on words, but on actions. Applause rose up. It was unknown how much of Joe Sakai's determination and conviction Samsara's fans could sense. They only knew that when it came to their captain, they need to support him unconditionally, no matter the time or place. Second battle of the group arena begin. Happy, Yushu, Lord Grimm, Samsara, Joe Sakai, Cloudpiercer. Yushu could be said to be the last one in the whole stadium to know of Samsara's arrangement. When he saw Joe Sakai's Cloudpiercer appear on screen, he was very surprised as well. But very quickly, he was like those pro players who had determined Samsara's thought process. Yushu sensed the back-to-the-wall killing intent of the other side. And right now, Sun Shang had already fallen. This killing intent was almost entirely reliant upon Joe Sakai to maintain. If he, the second player, also didn't play as well as they hoped, then Samsara's group arena today might be even more disastrous than last rounds. Samsara's energy was entirely gathered upon Joe Sakai right now. 13%. This was the health that Yishu's Lord Grimm had remaining. There was no chance that he could defeat Joe Sakai with this amount of health, but if he could cause even a bit of trouble to his opponent, then that would be a direct hit blow to Samsara. Stay firm, quick and forceful, no pretense. While many people were sure that Yishu would have Lord Grimm recover some health and then slowly wear down the opponent, Yishu had Lord Grimm charge forward. End chapter.